I'll be honest with you guys, I have zero idea why any of you wanted this, but some people requested it, so I'm reviewing this game. Essentially, this is called Criminal Girls Invite Only. And it's a game about, well, these... no, the premise is a bit more complex, so I'll actually explain. Essentially, you're in hell, right? And these girls, these prisoners, are sinners that you're trying to guide toward the path of salvation by both having them overcome these trials of redemption of hell, which are visualized by this dungeon that we need to traverse, as well as by doing another thing that we'll comment on about later, right? And if you just want my opinion of if this game is good or not, yes, it is very good. In objective terms, right? This is just a very well-made JRPG. The graphics are obviously very stylized, so they can look a lot better with a lot less effort. So obviously this doesn't have the graphics of some AAA title, but ironically, due to that, it can utilize more cheaper assets like this in order to still make something, in my opinion at least, looks way better than most of them. The gameplay is a bit grindy, especially for that reason that I'm going to talk about later, but it is also pretty fun. It has, how do I describe this? It implements some pretty interesting spins to the normal JRPG formula, right? That's where I'm getting at. The music is a banger. I'll be honest, I've been listening to this game's OST as I work on other stuff, right? Ever since I began playing it in a more dedicated fashion. So the OST of this is not just good, in my opinion, it's an absolute banger. So there is that too. The story and characters, just from the premise, you can probably tell that while it can get quite serious, it's mostly comedic and silly anime nonsense. And as long as you take that into account, both the story and characters are pretty enjoyable. I really like all of them, both, like I said, in an aesthetic level, as well as just because their situations they're put in and their interactions with one another and the way they react to certain things is all quite entertaining. I'm not going to pretend like this is Shakespeare, it's well written or anything like that, but it's certainly entertainingly written. It's how I would describe it. But if you are actually interested in my opinion, you might be like wondering at this point, yeah, okay, I get it. This is a good JRPG, a well-made, fun JRPG, right? But why the hell should I play it? There are only on Steam literal hundreds of good JRPGs, of quality JRPGs released each year. So why should I pick this one up instead of any of the other alternatives? And well, the reason is because they, like I alluded to earlier, they put some pretty interesting spins on the JRPG formula. One of them is this. Since these are sinner girls that you're trying to lead toward a path of redemption, they obviously don't obey you right away. And even when they start following your orders, due to, again, the thing I keep referencing, they still don't behave a normal JRPG party where you can... every character has one turn and you can decide what they do on each turn. No. What they will do instead is that they will give you a list of options. And you have to choose between the options that they give, what do you think it's best to do? And so you can be often put into situations where you just have to choose the least bad option, or where you have a lot of good options but you can only choose one instead of being able to just span all their best abilities every turn, right? So it's an interesting set of limitations that you don't have any control over what you'll be able to do each turn. That you only be given a set of options and you have to choose which of these options sound the best to you. And this is interesting because there's a way to influence this, but essentially the options the girls will give you of not only what they can do but what they're willing to do each turn, they aren't stored. For example, I have the option to use either, I'm going to refer to her as the purple haired girl skill, or I can use the blue haired girl skill. And I have to choose. If I use this now, for example, there's no guarantee that next turn the purple haired girl will still give me the option to use Lucky Punch. She might, but it's not guaranteed. And so I have to choose which of the abilities are better to use each turn, knowing there's an opportunity cost to any decision I make. And this keeps battles engaging because instead of turning your brain off and just clicking auto whenever there's a random encounter, no, each random encounter requires a lot of thoughts. Not just because of the opportunity cost that I mentioned before, but because this game is quite hard. So, for example, if I don't use the abilities when I'm given the opportunity, I may lose a lot of health on a single encounter, right? So that's a resource lost there. But MP is also really hard to come by in this game. So if I use it to minimize the health cost of random encounters, then I might not have enough for the boss or for a particularly difficult enemy, for example, since not only do the girls need to even give you the option to use their abilities so you can do so, but obviously they still cost MP, as is normal for this genre. So there's that element that you also have to take into account. And overall it just creates this very cool system where you, at the end of the day, are still playing a turn-based JRPG, but it's one that, by its very mechanics, keeps you engaged, even in battles that in any other game would be insignificant, that you would just go through, put it on auto, and even not even pay them any mind, right? So I really like that. And also, one thing that's interesting is that this gives you an actual reason, or I should say, a kind of necessity to use even the attacks of weaker characters that you normally wouldn't use. Like, for example, all three of these girls here, the purple-haired one, the brown-haired one, the blondes, like, all three of them are physical fighters. So asking them to attack will yield a very respectable amount of damage on the enemy. But if I ask this girl to perform a physical attack instead of the skill she is offering me right now, to do a pathetic amount of damage. So normally she'd be the kind of character you wouldn't even think about using the physical attacks of, but in this game you need to, because one of the ways you can get skills to appear more frequently is through both the use of the thing that I'm going to mention in the future, as well as through the situation of the battle. The girls notice that a battle is more difficult, they will be more willing to use skills. So there's a lot of factors that influence the options that they will give you, what skills they have, how much affinity do they have for the protagonist, what's the battle situation. But one of the things that you can do to turn things in your favor and to get some skills to appear more is to use the characters like normal actions. So again, generally you would never use this girl's physical attack, but you need to in order for her abilities to start appearing more. So the fact that it gives you this necessity, I think it's quite a cool idea. And it doesn't limit you to her. For example, if you want to use this girl's abilities, for example, the blonde one, you also have to pick her normal action. So in a way, it's also a reward for you if there are more physically focused attacker, because you get to deal more damage if you choose then, and you may get a very cool ability to use the next turn. Though they generally aren't extra magic attack abilities, they are with her, which keeps the game balanced and keeps both characters useful. So again, the changes that this does to the normal combat system of JRPG are really good. They sound really annoying on paper, all these limitations, but in practice, when you're playing, it just makes the whole experience of playing a turn-based JRPG a lot more fun. Like, if you're the type that hates these kinds of JRPGs because you think they're boring, give this one a try. Because I'm not going to guarantee anything, but it might click better with you. Unfortunately, or I guess fortunately, since this is a divisive topic, the other unique thing about this game is a pretty controversial one. It's the kind of thing that may attract as many people as it will detract. A lot of people who weren't interested are probably going to be more interested after that, and a lot of people who were interested may pass on this because of that. So what am I referring to? Well, I will get there, and since I can show this better on the place where it's done itself. And so I'm going to do a bit of a cut here, and we'll talk about that aspect of the game when I get to a save point. So throughout the prison you find these rest points, the infirmaries, right? And you can use them as Dark Souls bonfires and teleport from one to the other, or you can use them to rest, which will work just like resting at an inn in another JRPG, and will essentially restore all the girls' health and MP for free. Now obviously they are very few and far between in order to keep this balanced, so you're actually encouraged to heal using like items and abilities and stuff instead of just relying on this. But it is a pretty good thing to encounter, especially since they're some of the only spots in which you can save in. But the main reason they are important is because of this lovely option here, which is the game's main differential. And it's also where most of the ecchi of it is. I forgot to tell at the beginning, I'm very sorry, but this is an ecchi JRPG specifically. So in any other game, this kind of plot would just progress with the protagonist helping these girls get to the end of this dungeon so they can be redeemed or whatever. But on this one, you actually gotta redeem them not only through the progression of this dungeon, but through by yourself essentially. You gotta literally correct them in order to beat the sins out of them, quite literally. So if you didn't get by my euphemisms, the main, I say, kink of this game, the main thing it's trying to appeal to is S&M, with you being the S. So you need to punish the girls in very sexual ways, which sounds sinful in and of itself, but in order to cleanse them of their sins. That's how this is integrated into that story and that premise that I'm talking about. But gameplay wise, why is this important? Now obviously this is a bit too ecchi to actually show on this video, like these punishments being executed, but you can probably find it around the internet somewhere. It's not hard, I'll just say that. But the reason they are important not only for ecchi purposes and not only in terms of integrating that with story and whatever, but the reason they're important for gameplay is because when you level up, that simply makes the girl's stats higher. You don't get any abilities out of leveling the girls up. To unlock their unique abilities, you need to go through this punishment minigame in order to slowly go unlocking abilities that you can use in both the overworld and during battle. With the first one being the ability to command them at all, because like I said, the game really has this emphasis on the fact that these girls aren't very loyal to you. They don't just obey your orders obediently, I'd say, like any other party members. They're kind of being forced into it. And even despite that, they are still kind of unwilling, which is why they don't obey you perfectly as they would in any other JRPG, as I went into before. But starting off, whenever they're recruited into your party, they won't obey your orders at all. They refuse to do anything during battle. So you gotta go through this minigame at least once just to unlock the ability to command them in battle, for them to actually use their even basic attack. And after that, as I said, you will get the character specific abilities through playing this minigame more and more. So it's a thing that's very well implemented, I'd say, ecchi, in pretty much all aspects of the game. So conceptually, at least, this is actually something I quite love. In execution, however, as I alluded to before, it just makes the game grindier. Since you don't get these abilities out of just leveling up, you need to do this minigame many times in order to get the various characters' abilities. And so it just makes it so you're encouraged to grind. So you're encouraged to go on many random battles and even over level just so you can get more options during gameplay. And even adding these more options involves, like I said, an actual minigame that you have to play again and again and again. And so it just becomes kinda boring, even if you're into this stuff. Totally not speaking from experience, of course, but anyway. And the fact that this minigame, you can't just do it whenever you want. You don't just waste time, you have to waste a resource that you acquire through battle, that you need to spend more and more in order to unlock more and more powerful abilities. So, like I said, you can make the game very grindy just to unlock more options, which is a further made worse by the fact that the same currency you need to use to unlock these abilities and to play this minigame in the first place is the one that you need to use to buy items. So if you want to be well stocked and have various gameplay options, you gotta go through all this inconvenience. So, like I said, in concept, it's a pretty good way to implement ecchi in a way that makes sense and is well integrated in various aspects of the game, but in execution, they could have done better. But overall, I'd say that this is a pretty good ecchi JRPG. If you are into that stuff, totally not like me, I'm not that kind of person, you probably really like this because it's something that appeals to your kink and is just a really good game on top of that. And if you're just in for a good game and don't mind this extra weird aspect to it and can handle a bit of grind, I'd say this game is pretty good, to actually really good even. I really do like this game, but I think you should really think carefully about everything I said and make a informed purchase. Like, really consider each aspect that I talked about and like how much you value them, and decide if you actually want this game, if you can actually endure through its weirder or even enjoy its weirder and more grindy aspects for the more interesting part, so if you rather just play something more standard. But overall, if I had to say one thing one way or the other, I would recommend this game and do think it is quite good. So for all you that for whatever reason just saw me playing this in the background and actually wanted to know more about it, here you go, I guess. Why am I being so mean? Poor people, they just ask for a goddamn review and I have to treat them like shit. Anyway, let's end this video, you get the point already. And that will be it for today. If you liked this video, then please remember to, of course, like, comment and subscribe, as this really helps me out even more than you think. If you really liked it though, then I'd also really appreciate if you could support me financially, either through a one-time paid comment donation or by joining my membership, where for $1 a month, you get to participate in exclusive polls in order to decide which videos I'll make next, as well as get access to a couple of exclusive videos and, best of all, even get your name added to this incredibly fancy list of awesome people right here. But of course, no matter how much you choose to donate, if you choose to do so at all, do know that I deeply appreciate any cent you're willing to throw my way, as well as just the fact that you're watching this video up to this point at all. But with that, I think it's about time to, as always, bid you guys farewell. Obscure Anime out!